All right, here we are, 9 o'clock. We are live. This is the first one we're doing this year. UCFsports.com FanCast with a couple great representatives of Boise State University. Well, first of all, I'm Brandon Helwig with UCFsports.com. I got my buddy Carson Ingle. What's up, Carson?
Hey, man. Good to be on this with you.
Awesome. We got Bronco. Is it Bleimeyer?
Blameyer.
Bronco Blameyer, who I've seen him on Twitter, and I knew that was the name of kind of the legendary former Boise State athletic director, and I just thought it was just kind of a cool username he had. I just thought that would just, that guy was there forever, just kind of someone might have a George O'Leary themed username if you're a UCF fan, but that's actually your name because the former AD is your great uncle.
That's right, Gene Blameyer, the former athletic director at Boise State. Inventor of the blue turf, and that's obviously I was born into the fandom, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about Boise State today.
Awesome, and lastly, but last but not least, we got Connor Johnstone, and to tell us a little bit about yourself, Connor. I know you grew up a Boise State fan, and you actually ended up being a student athlete playing golf, right?
Yeah, I was very fortunate to play golf there from 2016 until 2021. Got to kind of experience the pandemic as a student athlete, which is unique to say the least. But I was born into the fandom just like Blameyer here. I had some relatives or some close family members play basketball and golf as well for Boise State. And so I was born into it, born and raised here in Boise, just about a half hour away. And I'm sure you guys are familiar, just like you guys at UCF, that when you're close to something that, is passionate to a lot of people, it tends to bleed into your blood system as well. And that's what it's been for me. And I haven't stopped since. So.
Yeah, awesome. We're going to dive right into that. First of all, I guess we'll start with you, Bronco. Is kind of tell us, why you became, a Boise State fan. I know you've got the family connection, obviously. Just kind of what's your background with Boise State? Maybe what are your favorite memories, I guess, as a Bronco fan?
Yeah, well, obviously, almost all the Blameyers are from Boise. Eventually, our great grandfather Boise, and then eventually his kids all moved there as well. I'm Gene Blameyer, is my uncle. So, I was kind of fated to become a Boise State fan, but I'm a big fan for another reason, because my dad was military growing up, so I'm a military brat, and I moved everywhere, 18 homes in 27 years, did Fort Mountain Homes, so got to spend a couple of years there. But when you're moving around all the time as a kid, you don't have a core. There's no place that you're from. Everyone's from somewhere, but you're not from anywhere. I was actually born in Florida, but I only lived there for like 6 months of my life before I was gone. So Boise became that home for us. No matter where we were and where we were moving to, we were going back every year to go visit family, to go to Boise State games, and to, visit the Blue and go eat at all the great places in Boise. So for me, Boise State became that home. And when people ask me where I'm from, well, I say, first off, I'm from everywhere and nowhere. But if I have to claim somewhere, I'm going to say Boise. I know Boise State fans, if they're watching, they know I'm not saying it right, and that's the evidence. Yeah, Boise's close to me just because of the family, but because it's been a home for me when I didn't really have one growing up.
Awesome. And Connor, you touched on it a minute ago. You grew up basically a Boise fan. You grew up right outside the city, right?
Yeah. I grew up in Caldwell, which is about 30 minutes away. There's some great wineries out there. It's it's kind of a little blue collar farm town. And so some of my cousins that played for Boise State, they were also very blue collar, and it was kind of easy to resonate with Boise State. We're, growing up, kind of a small town. It was always kind of overlooked when you were playing high school sports against kind of the big city that was Boise, at least nearby. And then once you kind of saw Boise State football fall into that blue collar role, always overlooked, always, very overmatched, but always were able to come out on top. I think as like a 6 to 8 year old, that was very easy for me to relate to and to kind of fall in love with. And so, just there was a level of pride to putting that Boise State jersey on as a kid, whether it was Kellen Moore, Dryzen James, like Doug Martin, whoever it was. There's a level of pride to putting that jersey on and being able to say, like, this team represents where I'm from better than maybe anything that I can relate to right now. And to be able to see Boise State showcase that on a national level was just something that was very easy to fall in love with. And like I said, it hasn't left me since. I mean, I bleed harder than I ever have. It's just been a little bit harder to do sometimes, but that's completely okay. So,
yeah, I think for as UCF people who follow UCF fans, I think most people's favorite memories for majority are probably twofold between, the 2013 Fiesta Bowl beating Baylor, kind of the first moment that, UCF really felt like they were on the big stage. And then at the end of 2017, capping off the perfect season with the national championship win in the Peach Bowl against Auburn. And those are kind of the highlights. Carson, you've been around for all those. You would agree that that's probably the highlights for any UCF fan, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that those are the two big ones, and that probably parallels a lot with like the Boise fan base, right? Like all the major moments, the Statue of Liberty against Oklahoma, and those kind of big time spotlight moments against major programs that Boise's been able to build a brand and a spotlight through. I feel like UCF's kind of done the same thing, and it's a similarity there.
I mean,
yeah. So what are some of you guys' favorite? I mean, I know there's a little bit different age gap a little bit. I don't know if Connor, if you remember that Fiesta Bowl, I don't know, maybe you kind of remember that, the Statue of Liberty, but between Bronco and Connor, like what are some of your favorite individual memories and some of your favorite games that you kind of grew up following?
Go ahead, Bronco.
Well, I was just going to with what you were saying about the similarities between Boise State and UCF before if I start talking about some of my great memories there. But I think you're right. I think there are similarities between these two programs. And it's almost created a rivalry atmosphere between the two of them because there are so many similarities. I remember I traveled to the Boise State versus UCF game in 2021. I was there. And there, I mean, it felt like a very, not just a hostile road environment, but it felt like this was a rivalry team to us. It felt like playing, Fresno State or San Diego State or something like that. And the student fans definitely let us know we weren't welcome there. So, I mean, and I think part of that has been because UCF has been so successful and done all those things that Boise State did. Boise State was going undefeated, going to the Fiesta Bowls. And I think the tone for what the 5 team could do before UCF was. And then in the last 5-10 years, UCF's been that team that's been kind of stepping up and doing that, and they've been kind of competing in the rankings. So I definitely agree that there is that similarity focus there, and it was great seeing the passionate fan base in UCF when I went down. But just real quick, because I know I took up a lot of time talking about that, but real quick, probably my favorite moment as a Boise State fan, and it is I was climbing around on the bleachers when Jared Zavansky was playing, but I don't remember those games. I was like 8 or 9 years old. But my favorite memory for Boise State, and it is actually my strongest and first memory of Boise State football, is the 2009 Fiesta Bowl win versus TCU, a team that just got beat yesterday by Colorado, or Saturday. But that's probably my first ever memory of a full game that sticks out in my mind. And I was sitting right there next to my grandpa, and I said, "Look, they're about to take this punt," and they faked it, and they went down. They ended up scoring, taking the lead, and that became a big one for the game. So that for me is probably my favorite memory, but of course we've had lots of great winning seasons since then, but I won't take up any more time talking about it.
Connor?
Yeah, my favorite memory, I do remember the Fiesta Bowl in 2007. I remember jumping up on a pull-out couch that my parents had, and I broke the reclining part that you kind of push back to recline with. I broke that. I was jumping up and down so hard. But my favorite memory, and it's one of my more of first real vivid memories, was the 2010 game at Virginia Tech, or at the neutral field that was FedEx Field in Landover, I believe. For me, that was when I started to take things personal as a fan, because I could kind of conceptualize what they were saying on game day about how we were too small. We didn't have enough fans. The Ryan Williams was too big for Virginia Tech. Tyrod Taylor was too fast. They're just too good of a team. And so I remember taking that personal as a little 11-year-old. And showing up on Labor Day to watch that game. And that's also one of the best games I think I've ever watched as a fan in general. Definitely not better than the 2007 one. But that game was so good, so back and forth. And we were playing in front of, UCF has done this as well, but 88,000 Virginia Tech fans to our 7,000. We had to fly 2,100 miles. I think they drove 2.5 hours, something like that. And we just showed up and we just straight up beat them. And that was when it was supposed to be our national title year. Of course, later faltered by some other things down the road. But I just remember that being my first real memory of holy cow, this is unbelievable. I got to do this for the rest of my life. Sign me up. So for me, it'd definitely be that 2010 game against Virginia Tech. That's
awesome. One thing that I kind of feel like, and maybe you guys can add some perspective on this, but Boise State, just the run in the last, 20, 25 years, it's just done so much for the Boise community. I don't know, living in Florida, I would ever have heard anything about Idaho or Boise if it wasn't for Boise State football. They've really helped put the area on the map. Just, can any of you guys that, maybe, obviously, Connor, you're from the area, what has Boise State football kind of meant to the community of Boise, especially over these last 20 years?
I don't think you guys will see it when you're downtown in Boise. There's going to be about a crane every half block. There's going to be construction on every road. You guys are going to see a completely renovated design for the football stadium. You're going to see a city that really is completely brand new within the last 8 or 9 years. And just maybe when you guys walk down the streets, understand that none of that would be there without Boise State football. Besides maybe a hospital or a U.S. Bank building that's 14 stories high, none of that would be there. The business it's brought in for the city, for the community, for the state, it literally can't be put into words. I remember when I was 10 or 11 years old, you drive through downtown and take you 35, 40 seconds. You'd hit every light, wouldn't have any issue. Now it takes you 10, 15 minutes to get through, and that's if you're not hitting construction, which maybe doesn't sound like that much compared to Orlando. But for a little podunk town of Boise, I promise you it is. And you guys will see the cranes, you'll see the construction, you'll see the 25,000 kids on campus compared to what it was back then. And you'll see all the California kids. You'll see all the parents that fly in because they want to watch football. That is all because of not only that 07 Fiesta Bowl game, but definitely that run. I don't think it can really be attributed, or I don't think you can give Boise State football enough credit for what they've done for this community.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk a little bit about last week, season opener.
Yeah.
For UCF, and Carson, you could chime in here too. I mean, it's kind of like the contrasting issues. Like UCF, they kind of knew what they were getting into. They knew they were going to, wipe the floor with Kent State, one of the worst programs in FBS. Didn't have to open the playbook, and then contrast. Boise has a huge game against a top 10 Washington team and one of the best offenses in college football. I know things didn't go your way. Just kind of, I guess, Bronco, were you surprised by the result? I mean, I was talking with BJ Rains earlier, and he said, no one really predicted that, Boise was going to win that game, but just, I know it was disappointing, the final score, although maybe it was a little bit closer than the score indicated. Just kind of what were your first impressions seeing, this team, suit up against Washington last week?
Well, one of those I was not predicting a win. I was predicting it was going to be closer. Well, I think I was saying keep it within 11 points. And for most of the game, we kept it right there. It was a 2-possession game, pretty much right up till the fourth quarter. And I agree that Boise State, they did better in this game than the score finally showed. We only completed, I think it was 19 passes. So Taylor Greenlee was 19 of 39, 244 passes. But like 10 of those, 8 to 10 of those were drops. They were in and had the ball. Even, Eric McAllister, who was amazing for his last year and had great moments in this game, probably the highlight catch of the game around the sideline, he dropped like 3. So Boise State, was a few catches away from putting themselves in scoring position. They were a beautiful punt that rolled into the end zone from chucking up Washington at the 1-yard line and forcing them to drive and punt. They were a fumble that they forced that was then recovered somehow amongst 5 Boise State players by the wide receiver who fumbled it, from being able to set up on, Washington's side of the 50 with a chance to go put it within a 1-score game. So, Washington has Penix, and I think they're a college football playoff contender, a top 10 team. I think we're going to see that at the end of the year competing for that one of those top spots. So you got to compare it against that. But Boise State was close. I think the craziest thing has been the overreaction to both of these teams' games. For Boise State fans, everyone's talking about like, oh, we got to fire the coaches and our offensive coordinator sucks and this team is terrible and the dynasty is over and Boise State's not Boise State anymore. We're some of the group. It's just this massive. We lost to a top 10 program that's probably going to be competing for national championship. And then on the other side, UCF goes and demolishes Kent State. I watched that game. It was a nice one. I watched that from the pool. They go and they just demolish Kent State. And now ESPN is updating UCF's win projections to 10 wins and 4th in the Big 12 in their first season at a Power 5. So I think that there was a lot of swings both ways on, way too far to the negative, way too far to the positive on both these teams. I think we're going to get a better appreciation of where both these teams are when they come to blue this Saturday.
Well, I'll say, at least from the UCF side, I think another reason why the expectations maybe got a little more optimistic is just because some of the bad losses that the Big 12 took with Baylor and Texas both losing. I think that really made people a lot more confident, at least the fan base. And I think the fan base seeing that coupled with probably the final score, maybe not necessarily the way the game played out between y'all and Washington, but that final score, I think, gave at least the fan base a little more confidence. I don't think the team or anyone affiliated with the team has any sort of easy night sleeping, thinking about going to this game and everything that it entails from a travel perspective, from a road environment perspective. Like, that's not happening, but definitely the fan base, I think, is a little more confident. But, I think it's a great point to just kind of still be optimistic if you're a Boise fan. Watching that game from an outsider standpoint, I mean, that was the biggest thing to me is all those passes early in that game that Taylon Green couldn't have thrown better. His wide receivers don't catch them. If they catch 2 or 3 of those balls, we're talking about a different story. That team gets a different rhythm, and maybe we've got an entirely different result to talk about, or at least a much closer game. So, those kind of factors, I certainly will be nervous on Saturday morning when we wake up there to see how things play out.
Yeah, Connor, what did you think about last Saturday? I mean, what Carson was saying, I think there were 6 drop passes, which was uncharacteristic.
I think they were all by Billy Bones, too, for being honest.
Okay, and there were guys who have been. I mean, it's not like they're new players that you're not sure about. I think they're all returning players. And what was the deal with the turf? Like players were slipping and sliding and falling over and falling down. I know that was a discussion with the coaches. Like, what was up with the turf? But that played a role too.
It was very interesting hearing our staff kind of talk about the turf when normally we're the ones that are like, you know what, dude, it's just turf. You guys just got to get over it. You just got to play the football game. It's just turf. Don't worry about it. So normally people are complaining about playing on blue turf, and all of a sudden, we were mad about slipping on turf. So I thought that was unique. But I went into that Saturday game. I'm always going to be the overconfident fan, the one that has way too much hope, because that's kind of all we have as fans, our hope. And so I went into that going, you know what, absolutely, we're going to take them down. Like, yeah, we don't have anybody come back on defense. We're fine. We're going to UW. We've never won there. We've never scored more than 15 points there. We're fine. We're going to win. And then when we got done, I kind of compared it to when you're at a bar and you see a girl that's just a little bit out of your league. And you're like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't go talk to her. But you're like, but she might say yes. Like, you never know. And so you go, and then she rejects you. And then you're like, well, yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. Like, what else did I think would happen? So that was kind of what I thought that game was like. We scored first. I thought we stopped them a couple times early, and our cornerbacks looked good. Our secondary looked really, really good. They were not able to run the ball, and Penix wasn't really completing them early. We got up to a quick lead, and then, man, it just hit the fan, and it hit it quick. And you knew kind of right exactly when it did where that game was going. It was just one of those weird games where it felt like, right when it was over, it was over. And so for me, I wasn't terribly surprised by that result. We've never played well up there in Seattle. That's a really tough place to play, especially to open the season. And it felt like once those guys were rattled, they didn't really know how to respond, which was what was a little concerning to me towards there in the second half. We're just kind of making boneheaded plays, but that's going to happen. It's week 1.
Brandon, you started off asking Connor about the turf last Saturday. Obviously, the blue turf is like a big kind of unknown thing for UCF and UCF fans. And I don't know if our Boise friends have seen it, but I know you know about it. That apparently we're practicing one day this week at the Masters Academy, which is in Orlando, and they have a blue turf. And I was wondering kind of what you thought about that. Like, is that just sort of like a gamesmanship? Like, hey, we've got a blue turf in our area, so we can do this. Like, I don't have, and maybe you guys can answer if you've ever heard like other fan bases or other teams trying to like pre-prep for the blue turf in a certain way. Cause I wasn't sure if it really had any, like what kind of effect could that have really, Well,
yeah, I don't know. I would just let me just chime in real quick, and then you can talk, Bronco. I was kind of curious if Gus Malzahn was going to acknowledge this or try to keep it secret, because he likes to keep things close to the vest. But I think the one thing that Boise State's blue field has done is that it has emboldened high school programs and other college programs to go with the colored turf route. And Masters Academy, as you said, a couple miles away from UCF, their coaching staff has UCF connections. Garrett Kruzek is the head coach, first year there. He's the son of former UCF head coach Mike Kruzek. For the Boise State people who don't know, he was the longtime offensive coordinator for UCF in the 80s and 90s. He became the head coach in 1998, when Dante Culpepper was playing, and he coached through 2003. So he's now the offensive coordinator for his son at Masters Academy, and they have a blue turf. And, I think they said the biggest thing is depth perception and kind of, I know when we're watching on TV, we're looking from above, and that can be kind of jarring, but maybe when you're, at field level, and I guess Boise's wearing blue jerseys, so it all can be kind of crazy. I guess they feel like if they have something so close, they might as well take advantage of it. We'll see if it makes a difference or not. But Bronco, we were talking before we came on air. Your great uncle is the former Boise athletic director who actually, came up and has developed the blue field at Boise State. Can you kind of give us the quick story from what you understand? What was the inspiration for making what I had to think back in 1986 or whenever the blue turf was installed? That had to have been something that was incredibly like a wild thing that people just probably didn't even understand.
Well, and yes, I'm blanking on the exact date that he put it in. It was right after he became the athletic director there. I will tell that story here. I just wanted to real quick though talk about them playing on the blue and that reasoning behind it. Everything, at least as an outsider looking at UCF, everything that my perception with UCF is, it's all about marketing. They're all about trying to get that national attention, which then brings them those higher rated recruits, and then brings them those opportunities to move up to the Big 12. That kind of, the goal of going out and claiming a national championship and putting it on all your billboards and then putting it on your stadium and all of that. Whatever. But it's amazing. The American so in marketing and promoting their teams and finding ways to kind of ride the public opinion wagon. So for me, him practicing on the blue and kind of announcing that he was doing that, I think it's just all to develop some hype for this game and to show a level of preparation maybe. But more than that, I think it's to get some media attention coming into the matchup. Other teams have done that. I think it was Oregon State and when they came and played us, or 2010. They practiced on a blue turf before they came and played us and still got walloped. So I don't know that it does former players when they come on my channel about the effect of blue turf and whether they put anything into it. And they, as far as like an offensive coordinator type thing, when you're looking down on it from the press box, maybe it has an impact there. But when you're there and you're looking across the field of the player in front of you, the stands aren't blue. The background's not blue. There's no kind of, added benefit. You're not looking down at the player onto the turf. So it's not like they hide any better. UCF doesn't have any problem just demolishing USF. And they're green on their turf. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But as far as the story behind the blue, yeah, my uncle, right after he became athletic director at Boise State, it was time to replace the turf. They'd gone to AstroTurf a few years before, and it was time to replace it. And he was sitting there thinking, we're going to spend all of this money. I don't remember the number. It was not that big by today's standards, but back then it was a pretty large amount. We're going to spend all of this money replacing our stadium, and nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to care. Not even our own local media are going to care about this. And so he was sitting on with all the kind of thinking about how much it was going to cost and what the impact was going to be, kind of that marketing perspective, like I just talked about. And he thought, why does it have to be green? I don't know, maybe it's up being in the sky, you got blue air around you. He starts thinking about that. He says, why does it have to be green? So he gets home, and there's a baseball game on. I don't remember which one it was, maybe the Rangers, but there's a baseball game on, and his kids are watching, and he goes over and he turns the color on the TV set down until the field goes from green to blue. And he sits back and he looks and he said, you know what? That doesn't look so bad. So he approached the president of the university and he said, hey, I want to do this. Are you on board? If we're going to do it, though, we can't tell anybody. Nobody can know, because if this gets out, the media is going to react. The fan base is probably going to react. It's going to get squashed. So not even the coaches knew until right before it was getting installed that they were actually going to be doing this. So they install the blue turf at Boise, and of course the media just goes crazy talking about how dumb this is and how stupid it looks and how all of this stuff. And I think even the coaches weren't fully on board. But what they started noticing is after the blue got installed, Boise State, first off, people noticed that it got installed, and they became a national type of brand. They were able to go recruit players who they would never even have been able to get into the living room for, let alone get them to come to the blue, because now they had something different that set themselves aside from everybody else. And over the years, Boise State improved. Shortly after that they moved up to Yes, in 1996, and then they started pulling together those wins. And then, of course, you got to win on the blue to actually make it mean something. But setting that image at the beginning, setting that marketing tool at the beginning, really put this university on the map and allowed Boise State to become Boise State right there from the very beginning. So whether or not it has an impact as far as does it increase the ability of players on the blue to perform versus outside players, I don't think so. But what it does do is it increases the players that you're going to be able to bring to the school, their level of play. And it also inspires the fan base. The thing that makes Bronco Stadium or Albertson Stadium now, so hard to play in, the reason that they're 112-14 since 2003, third in the country all time, since 2003, the reason they're so hard to play against on the blue is because of Bronco Nation. It's not a huge stadium. It's 30-something thousand seats. But when you get on there and you're down there on the field listening to 30,000 plus Bronco Nation fans screaming their lungs out, it is a very intimidating experience. And so that's what makes it tough, is the fans in the stands.
Someone's
Matt
got to
Brodsky
answer
has
that,
a
right?
comment. Is this true? I mean, I think we've heard this for years. Is this an urban legend? How many birds die each year by crashing into the surface, or is that a myth? Does that actually happen?
That is a myth. There is a river that runs right by the stadium. You look on some of the overhead shots, you can see the river right next to it. So ducks will wander up onto the turf. And some commentators, some ESPN analysts sometime made a joke about there being ducks on the field before he came in because they were nesting there thinking it was an ocean, a water surface. And then someone made a joke about it being somewhere where ducks die on the blue. And it kind of, spiraled after that. But it is true that ducks do come and die on the blue. You should look at Oregon's record against us at home.
I like that. Hey, Connor, kind of tell us about the atmosphere. Like, what are UCF fans gonna experience when they walk into Albertson Stadium on Saturday? What's the team gonna feel like? Boise State obviously is known for the tremendous home record. I know that it's kind of tapered off a little bit the last couple of years, but I know you guys are known for a tremendous atmosphere. Like, kind of tell us about that. What it's gonna be like.
Yeah, I think Boise State fans in the city of Boise, or Boise State football, is very lucky because we're the only show in town. It's not just a game for these people in Boise; it's a true event. And so, the tailgating experience is going to be awesome. Not when I was at UCF in 2021, it was a great atmosphere. We were out there, and the yard over there where everyone goes out and sets up and tailgates. It's going to be a little bit different. Yeah, it's a memory mall. That was a great experience. It wasn't very welcoming for me being in blue, but it was a great experience. It's going to be a little bit different. We have a huge parking lot that really is where all the students park at the university, and that's where we're going to be. That's where everyone tailgates. The whole city of Boise will be out there. I don't know how many people we get, but I think it's around double the stadium capacity, maybe around 75,000 people get out there to tailgate before the game. And so the atmosphere is going to be great. People are going to start setting up shop around 11 a.m. noon. Is what you're going to see. You'll have some fans come in before, obviously, set up. You'll have some fans set up a little bit closer to game time. But around 11 a.m. noon, you'll start to get the tailgaters rolling in. You'll start seeing the Boise State flags as you drive across the Boise River there on Broadway. Start seeing people set up. And then there are some bars across the way. If you guys, maybe don't know anybody tailgating, you want to go and have a few beers, have a few drinks, watch some other football games. There will be some bars across the street. You'll be able to see them. It's pretty easy. They're going to be called like End Zone and Suds and stuff like that. That's where you get a little bit more of a rowdier party atmosphere, some more college kids, maybe guys in their late 20s hanging out there. And most of the time people start there, head over to the parking lot, tailgate, head into the game about an hour and a half, hour before. And then once you get into that stadium, man, he's right. You kind of walk in on the ground level. That's just kind of the way that stadium's set up. And so you really walk in and you hear the noise right away. And it doesn't really stop. And then, obviously, that place fills up pretty fast. And concessions, I don't know how concessions have been I know in the past they've been a little bit, wait times have been a little bit long in terms of trying to get beers or trying to get food. It's just kind of a tight atmosphere with everything. And they've been trying to throw more vendors in there, and it hasn't really been working to our favor. And so if I had to give advice to any of the UCF fans going, I'd say try to get in a little bit early, get the concessions that you want. And then once you get to your seat, maybe stay there until maybe halftime or the end of a quarter. That would just kind of be my one piece of advice. But the atmosphere is awesome. It's unlike anything I've really seen at any away game I've been to. It's a true event from start to finish. And it doesn't really stop right after the game. People will stay out there and drink and tailgate until midnight, 1 a.m. Like, they don't kick them out by any means. And so it's a true event atmosphere, and I can't wait for a lot of you guys to experience it.
I mean, I would agree 100%. Every year I make it a mission to go to one Boise State game if I can afford it. And so the experience is incredible. The tailgating is amazing. The reason the lines for concessions are so long is because the food in the stadium is incredible. I don't know.
Really?
It's amazing. They got a taco place that's just incredible tacos. They've got a barbecue place, Blue 32.
We got 2 Chick-fil-A's as well.
They got a Chick-fil-A there. Yeah. I mean, it's not just normal go in, buy a hot dog and a hamburger concessions kind of thing. There was a lot of points raised by the fans about the line issues, and I think Jeremiah Dickey, our incredible athletic director, attempted to fix those a little bit. But yeah, I would definitely echo those comments. Get in early, try to grab some of the drinks and the incredible food in the stadium. It's going to be a great experience.
I obviously a lot of fans coming in are going to get the lay of the land when they either arrive Thursday, Friday, whenever they're getting there. But just generally speaking, is it a situation where if someone's staying at a hotel, it's probably better for them to maybe Uber to the stadium? Or is the parking situation kind of treacherous? Maybe if you don't have a parking pass, what's kind of the preferred, if you're aware, like what's kind of the preferred, mode to actually get to the stadium if you're a visiting fan, you think?
Yeah, so I'll take this one over, Bronco. I'm there for all the games. I would not drive a car nearby. That's just okay. You're gonna be looking at street parking, and sometimes places are gonna kind of just overprice them. Some of those parking lots, and so. But the beauty about Boise is, if you guys are staying downtown Boise, you're a 7-8 minute walk away. And like you said, you guys are gonna kind of get the lay of the land once you get over there. But my advice would be to walk if you're staying within a mile and a half radius. It's a very, very safe city, one of the safest in the world. And I always tell people to just kind of follow the blue. You'll see just people walking. Just follow them. You guys will figure it out. You don't even need maps on your phone. So if you guys are staying in downtown Boise or you're staying near the university, I would highly recommend you walk. It's just not worth it to park because you're going to end up, just parking and having to walk that far anyways. It's just kind of how it works out. And so I would just recommend walking across the Boise River Bridge, and you guys will find it in no time.
Got another good question here from Matt Brodsky. This is one thing I was kind of thinking about in relation to Boise. Is there sort of, as far as living up to the standards of the Chris Petersen era? I just feel like that's such a high bar. Like, if you're Brian Harsin, now you're Andy Avalos, it just seems like, I guess you guys can comment because you're the Boise fans, but, I know his question was about, Chris Petersen being out of college football now for 3 years, but is that just sort of something that the fan base is kind of having to come to terms yet? I mean, you want to be back at that level, but to win at the clip that he won at Boise, that might just be an unrealistic standard for any program.
Well, I mean, I will say that what he did at Boise makes it very difficult to be a Boise State fan. Here, you expect to be the 2009 Boise State team or the 2010 Boise State team opened up in the top 5. You expect to go to Washington and to beat them. Even if all the odds are against you, that's just what you expect. And you hold every coach, you expect every quarterback to be Kellen Moore. You expect every, running back to be Doug Martin. You expect every coach to be Chris Petersen, and it's really tough standard. Talk to former players that have come through, and talk about what's that like playing at Boise State with those standards, and it's tough. They see it as a great challenge to try and live up to those, but I mean it's tough. And then you lose to a team like Washington, who's a top 10 program, but we used to beat those teams, and then you get demolished, and everybody thinks that the sky is falling. So it would. If Chris Petersen tomorrow said, hey, I think I'd like to come back and maybe be around the program again, of course, everybody would say yes. I don't think that's ever going to happen. He left Boise because he felt he'd done what he needed to do here, was looking for another challenge. And he seems pretty happy at the commentator's desk right now. So he's always welcome back in Boise. I think there was some feelings of betrayal a little bit. I mean, he left us for the team that beat us at the beginning of the season. He left us for Washington. And he said he wasn't going to leave. And then halfway through the season, he said, no, I'm not leaving. I'm not accepting any offers. And at the end of the year, he just left. So I think there was initially some angst and frustration. But it's been resolved. We've got short memories, and we love the great stuff that he did here at Boise. So, if he wanted to come back, sure, but he's not going to. And I think Andy Avalos is building something here. I think fans, though, just need to be patient because Chris Petersen won a Fiesta Bowl his first year. Brian Harsin won a Fiesta Bowl his first year, but that's pretty much unheard of. So you got to be patient with these coaches, and we'll see if Boise State fans are willing to be patient with Andy Avalos.
I have a quick story.
I got to say about Chris Petersen. I'll go and I'll let you give your story too. I've actually got one, which is maybe unusual for a UCF fan, but I book athletes for speaking engagements and appearances, and I actually booked Chris Petersen for an event back at Boise this past June, and he was so gracious and such an awesome guy. He's one of the only people that's ever like directly called me, like not his representative or his assistant or whatever. He actually called me and had like a conversation, just thanking me for getting him the opportunity. And we talked about this game, and he was super excited. He was asking me questions about UCF. He wanted to know about them. He was really excited to follow this UCF Boise game about it. So kind of a really, I left with great impressions of him, and I think he'll definitely be watching, and definitely from the way that he spoke to me, I think he keeps his pulse very much, on the program, the Boise program.
I'll build off that a little bit just to kind of talk about what Coach Pete brought to Boise. I had a roommate who played college football here. His name was Chase Atata, and he was recruited by Coach Pete. In his second year, I think they played New Mexico, and it was at home, and they won like 56-10. And Chase had like 3 sacks, 9 tackles. It was like his breakout game. And so they say, hey, Chase, we're going to have you go interview in the media room. First question, it's, hey, Chase, it's the first time New Mexico's ever scored double digits here. Something like that. Can you guys just kind of talk about what happened on defense? Chase was like, what do you mean? We gave up 10 points. We won by 48 points. Well, yeah, you guys kind of broke down a couple times there. And I think that just kind of shows the standard that Boise State fans have been so blessed and lucky to have for the past 23 years. And we were always told, don't take it for granted. And you always take it for granted, no matter what you are told. You always take it for granted because you don't realize how sweet it is. And so we're definitely being humbled here the last few years. But like Bronco said, I do think Avalos is genuinely building something. It just takes time.
I kind of feel like, at least for the last, 10 years, 5 to 10 years, that, Boise State and UCF were kind of kindred spirits, kind of the two programs regarded, top of the group of 5. They're always going to be in the mix for a conference championship, BCS, New Year's 6 game. And, with conference realignment, I kind of feel bad talking about this. UCF got the promotion. They got the call up to the Big 12, and Boise State is just as deserving, if not more so, just for the long track record, all those years in the 2000s, the Chris Petersen era, really just have done a lot for college football. And for whatever reason, whether it's, the Pac-12 wasn't interested, I guess the Big 12 prioritized the schools that they did. What's kind of the Boise State fan feeling about this? I know you want to beat UCF, you want revenge on that game 2 years ago, but is there like a disdain maybe that, like, man, this team coming in here like that? Are you feeling like that should be us, in the Big 12? Like, what's kind of the Boise State feeling about, I guess, kind of being, kind of ignored a little bit in conference realignment?
I'll go because I think I'm in the minority here with how I feel about UCF, because a lot of our fans really do respect and really admire UCF and what you guys have done and how you guys have been able to build off of everything that you've created. For me, I'm kind of jealous. I'm jealous. I'm mad at our old administration that was here in the athletic department. I'm mad of how they handled everything. Not his uncle, the people in between. I'm absolutely mad at how they handled everything when we really could have capitalized just like you guys did, and you forced the issue. And you said, this is our moment to advance in college athletics and to become a part of a premier conference. You guys did that. We didn't. We were stagnant. And we thought a good jump was up to the Mountain West from the WAC, and it wasn't. And our administration never capitalized on it. And then to see what you guys have done, for me, I'm really, really jealous. And, it pains me a lot not to see what you guys are doing. I mean, the national championship, that stuff pained the living crap out of me. But just to see what you guys have been able to do with some competent people at the helm, and to see you guys take advantage of your timing has really made me not sad as a Boise State fan, but definitely, a little jealous and a little, sad. I think sad's the right word.
Hey there, don't stoke the UCF ego anymore.
No, I want to say this real fast. You guys, UCF, you guys are great people. UCF, I hate UCF. They are my number one most hated team in America. not that I don't respect everything you guys do, but man, I've got some bad blood towards you guys, and so I'm excited for Saturday.
I think what year was it? Oh man, it was the year
Jesus.
F lost to Pittsburgh. You know, it was right after I think they won that not won, but they claimed that national championship. I think they lost that game. It was really close, and I went on the Boise State page and I was like, ha, so-called national champs with the score, you know, and everything. And I think you're going to see two things, because there was 2 responses to that page. There was a lot of that post. There was a lot of likes and people emphasizing those feelings, because there is a rivalry nature. We definitely felt it when we went down to the Boise State versus UCF game. The adult fans like yourselves were very gracious and welcoming to us, but the student fan base, I posted right after the game talking about it. I mean, that was probably the most hostile, unprofessional environment I've ever been in. I mean, they were chanting F Boise from pretty much when they lined up all the way. There was a rain delay, and they're all chanting F Boise the whole time. I mean, it was really, I hadn't experienced something like that before. So there is that rivalry nature, and I think there are a lot of people that, you know, they haven't liked that UCF has been the one going out and doing what Boise used to do. And there's been some years where they thought maybe Boise State in the rankings deserved to be the one actually going up and doing it. And maybe there's a little bias, East Coast bias, favoring UCF being in the American Athletic Conference there, that pushed them over the top. And Boise State fans felt, even though they weren't facing them directly, that was kind of a little bit of a spite to Boise, and they didn't like that. So there's going to be that rivalry nature. However, on the other end of it, I got chastised by so many Boise State fans on that post that said, hey, this isn't how we do it in Bronco Nation. You know, this isn't how we act. You know, we don't celebrate other people's, you know, downfalls. We don't go out and spit in their faces. You know, we welcome our opponents with a beer. You know, we go out and we yell as loud as we can and beat their team on the field. And then we give them a handshake and meet in the middle to pray afterwards if they're willing to join us in the circle. You know, that's how Boise State. So I think you're going to sense the rivalry nature, but I absolutely pray that it's not like what we faced when we went down to UCF. If it is, you guys get on Twitter and you let Bronco Nation know, and Bronco Nation will correct that. I mean, when Oklahoma came and played here in 2021, right after UCF had beat us, there was a lot of angst from that loss to UCF and also the way it happened. And our student fan base started chanting F Oklahoma State, which I had never heard our fan base ever do that. And instantly, the Boise State administration sent out an email right away that night saying, don't do this anymore. Fans were going up to the students in the stands saying, don't do this. This is not acceptable. So I think you're going to see that there's going to be a rivalry nature to the game and element. But I absolutely hope that when you guys arrive in Boise, that someone's going to buy you a beer. They're going to say, hey, we love that you're here. Let's talk about our programs. I think that is going to be overall the vast majority. There's always going to be a few knuckleheads who've drank too much, and you know maybe.
I'll be a knucklehead. I'm going to be a knucklehead. I'm ready to be a little rowdy with UCF. Yeah, I'm ready to be. I'll be a knucklehead.
Connor, did you have a bad experience at UCF? Like, did you hear? Were you cussed out or like walking through memory mall before the game? Like, did you? So like, how did you kind of feel at UCF?
I was, but I loved it. I loved that stuff. Like, I wanted it. I was not starting it, but let's go. Like, if you guys want to yell at me, you want to flip me off, you want to throw beer in me at Knights Library, like, let's dance. Let's do it. I love it because we don't really have a rivalry like that. And if it is, it's with BYU, and those fans don't really act that way a ton of times, you know? And so to be able to get that, to be able to have a true away game atmosphere, it was awesome. I loved it. I was chirping the students back. I think I went over there a couple times with a couple buddies of mine, and we were chirping right at them in their face. And I'm definitely in the minority of our fan base, but I genuinely enjoy that part of it. And then when the game's over and that score's 0-0, then yeah, let's go get a beer, man. I got you. It's on me. I'll shake your hand. That was a heck of a game. But for me, you know, there's supposed to be some passion in it all. And so I do enjoy that part of it, but I will never start it. And so if there's any fans there that want to get something going with me Saturday, I'm all for it.
Well, I guess leaping off the expansion, conversation, that I wanted to just get a feeling from you guys on, I guess, personally, and also like from a fan base perspective. Do you feel like all of this has left Boise in a better position than they were, or worse position? Because on one hand, to me, looking like East Coast to West Coast, it sort of feels like almost there's like sort of a downfall of West Coast football, right? Because all these schools from the Pac-12 are just jumping into Midwestern and Southern football leagues. But at the other side of it, I mean, it looks pretty likely that Oregon State and Washington State are going to merge with the existing Mountain West schools, either under the Mountain West banner or under the PAC banner. So, and obviously the 12-team playoffs coming. There's now consolidation where, instead of there was supposed to be 6 auto bids for the 6 top conference champions, now they might do 5, which still would mean, someone that's not, in the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, or the Big 12 would, there's going to be another team there that's going to get a spot. So do you guys feel like Boise's in a better position now or a worse position?
Connor, you want to lead off on this? I got some thoughts.
Yeah, I'll get out of the way because it's all very it's just kind of numbing to me because I've been a part of it since I was 12 years old. It seems like with expansion, and we've fallen short every time. For me, I don't know how much better of a spot we're in. What scares me is I don't know how much more expansion's coming in the next 6 years. And so I think getting Oregon State and Wazoo is kind of a nice consolation prize. But in terms of getting left behind, I think it leaves us in a little bit of a worse spot. Now, the nice caveat with that is we actually have a good leadership. We have great leadership now at the helm of things. And so with the spot that we're in and with the leadership that we now have with Jeremiah Dickey and Googler and the people that are under them, I think that almost leaves us in a better spot just because of who we have at the helm. But with how everything's shaken out, it's almost felt a little bit hopeless to where, I don't know what even we are in line to go in, whether it's the Big 12 or if we're going to merge with the Pac-2 and try to fight for something there. I have no idea what's going to come. But I do feel like with where we're at now, if we can get Oregon State and Washington State into our conference, I think that's an automatic win. And then again, with the athletic director that we have at the helm, I think that leaves us in a way better position than what we were maybe back in 2013.
I mean, I'll absolutely agree that Jeremiah Dickey is our best chance for moving up to the Power 5 since my uncle was here. I think when you look at where we were at a trajectory in 2011, I mean, if there'd been expansion then, if 2012 had been mass expansion, of course, you had some modest expansion with the Big East falling apart, and everything like that, and the American Athletic Conference being created. But if you'd had this kind of reshuffle back then, I think Boise State would have been in. I think they would have been in a spot that they would have, you would have been unable to reject them from that. And then between 2011 and Jeremiah Dickey being hired in was 2021, you went through the wilderness there with some really, really mediocre lower level athletic directors that were just, some of them weren't even there very long. And I mean, it really put Boise State in a bad spot. And Jeremiah Dickey is the best athletic director I've seen since my uncle was at Boise State. He's one of the best athletic directors in the country, and he's got Boise State focused in the right direction, doing the right things, increasing its donor base, increasing its expansion. The stadium's going to be expanding soon, increasing its development in all sports. I mean, he's doing the right thing. So Boise State needs to get into a Power 5. Are we in a better spot than we were before? Well, with this most recent round of expansion, I mean, adding Oregon State and Washington State's not going to hurt the Mountain West. That's going to be a great expansion for us. I've been arguing Mountain West needs to expand in some form for a long time. And I was, before the Pac-12 was an option, I was advocating to bring up some FCS schools, like maybe the Montanas or the Dakotas, bring them up into our conference and just have the numbers and some of the strength the Dakotas would bring. So I think you have to expand or die in this environment, and getting the Mountain West to 14 football teams would be a huge step for this conference in the right direction. But are we in a better spot with UCF and Cincinnati and Houston gone out of the group of 5? A lot of people are arguing, well, Boise State's actually great that they got left behind because now they have an easy path. They're winning the Mountain West and then they're in, and that's not true. The American Athletic Conference was the weakest, maybe ahead of the MAC, but the weakest group of 5 conference after it reformed, and nobody gave them a shot. UCF wasn't doing what they were doing. Memphis wasn't doing what they were doing. Their best teams were USF and maybe not UConn, but USF was their team, like former Big East, former powerhouse a long time ago. But that was their best teams. And it was the East Coast bias. It was the marketing of the American Athletic Conference, but mostly the East Coast bias factor. And if anybody who doesn't know what that means, if you look at a map of population bases, the East, like the right down the center line of the country, moving out to the East Coast, has the majority of the population in the U.S. That's where the majority of the college football teams are from. That's the majority of people bases are from. Those teams have much larger media markets. They get much more exposure. They get a lot more journalists talking about them. And in the modern age of college football, it's not about the BCS is gone. There's no computer that's putting a baseline out there. It's just about what people think about you. We have a biased committee out there just kind of meeting in a smoky room and coming up with their rankings of teams, and that's all human bias. And the more people you've got pushing out smoke into the atmosphere, the better chance you're going to have. And so UCF and the American Athletic Conference has benefited from that. So the Sun Belt's going to be that next conference. American Athletic Conference lost a bunch of teams, and they just lost SMU. The Sun Belt is already, last year, was starting to get that media hype, the same media hype that the American Athletic Conference started getting. So it doesn't matter that Mountain West is adding Oregon State and Washington State. It doesn't matter that all these other teams are out of it. Another conference on the East Coast is going to ride that bias, and in a couple of years, Mountain West champion is going to be, 22nd in the country, even though they have one loss, and an East Coast team with the same record is going to be in the top, 20, somewhere 15, and they're going to be the team. So is Boise State in a better position overall? I think they're in the same position. Is Mountain West going to get a little stronger? Yeah. Will they capitalize on it? Maybe. Gloria Navarez is the best Mountain West commissioner we've had in a long time. Greg Thompson before, and he was horrible. So maybe Gloria Navarez can push us through this and do what the American Athletic Conference did to promote its teams. But I don't know. I'm not exactly very hopeful. Our best chance for future success is to find our way into a Power 5 conference.
Well, you guys, remember about 10 years ago, Boise was going to come east. They were going to be a member of the Big East that eventually became the American Athletic Conference. But that move was more along the lines of the time that they thought the Big East was going to retain automatic qualifier status for the, BCS or, what we now call the, Power 5 automatic qualifiers for the New Year's Six. When that was clear, it wasn't going to happen. And looking at, I'm not sure if it had more to do with that or the TV dollars. Obviously, the decision was made. You were going to be putting your sports, I think, in the Big West and be football only in the Big East / America. They just decided that doesn't make sense. We're going to downgrade our men's basketball or baseball, whatever, by joining a lesser conference, and we're going to have all this travel and just not going to be worth it because there's no automatic bid. So obviously Boise made the decision to stay in the Mountain West. But in retrospect, you look over the last 10 years, I think Boise only made one NY6 bowl game. I think it was after the 2014 season, made it to the Fiesta Bowl. And obviously that coincides with, Chris Petersen leaving, but was that still the right move? Or is there a part of you guys that think that maybe they should have done it? Even if the American wasn't going to retain that status, that playing these Eastern schools and getting on ESPN and all this stuff, it would have maybe, risen the stature of Boise to the point where, maybe when the Big 12 came calling for some schools a couple of years ago, that Boise would have been included.
So I'm a little biased with this just because of men's golf, obviously, and thinking about where we might have been if we went to the Big West back in 2013. And so I think we made the right move back then. I think if you look at Boise State athletics as a whole, and it's hard to feel it if you're not really here, but it truly is a huge part of our community. And yes, on the national scale and, being one of the huge teams in the country, football is very, very important. But these smaller Olympic sports to Boise mean a ton. The women's sports space here is huge, and they're very, very successful. And if you look at men's basketball, we've risen over the past few years, and I don't know if that happens if we maybe made a different move back then. And so I think we made the right decision, which is what I believe you were asking back then. And, there's just something about it to where it's hard to feel it unless you're really here full time. But this university means a ton to this city, and that I think that goes for the Olympic sports, not only football, but also the Olympic sports as well.
I mean, you have a student athlete's perspective, and I have no disrespect meant towards any of the non-football sports at Boise State. Absolutely not. I absolutely support all Boise State athletics, men's and women's programs across the board. But when it comes to conference realignment, the only decision maker should be college football. That is where your money is made. Over 60% of most college athletic budgets come from football, and that's where your national attention is made. Maybe you get lucky like San Diego State and you go on a big run and people know about you for a little bit, but in 5 years, nobody's going to remember that San Diego State made a almost run to almost won the national championship. No one's going to remember that. But what you do in football sticks around because the TV dollars are more, the viewership is more. and you just have a chance to make such a much bigger impact. If you're a basketball school, like Kansas or UConn, or if you're a baseball school like Vanderbilt, nobody cares about you on the national stage. But if you're a football school, if you're a football powerhouse, you are going to be making the money, you're going to be making the national attention, and the rest of your sports are going to be elevated with you eventually from the financial cash flow that comes down. So the question is, should Boise State have made that move? In retrospect, hindsight's 2020. Yes, because then they would have been on ESPN, which was a big loss for them once the Mountain West moved off of ESPN and came out of a lot of people's easy access living rooms onto CBS Sports Networks, which a lot of places don't even carry, or FS1, which no one's watching. So that loss of ESPN was huge. But the American Athletic Conference was much better conference leadership, and they would have been able to factor in with that East Coast bias, and that's what they should have done. Now, if you go back, if I teleport and I'm given the keys to the Boise State car back then in 2012 or 2013, whatever it was, do I make the move to stay in the Mountain West? Absolutely. Every single time. You don't know what's going to happen. What happened with the American Athletic Conference, you don't see that coming. The East Coast bias factor was not as well established back then, and you don't make that decision. So I'd say, did they make the right move with the facts they had? Yes. For what we're looking at, no. But for when you're looking at future conference expansion, Boise State's other programs, they're going to have to deal with what they got. Every other one of those programs has a path to a national championship. You can win a national championship in basketball from a lower conference. Look at what Gonzaga, or be in a spot to go play for it. Look at what Gonzaga does. As an Olympic athlete, it doesn't matter where you're playing. You're going to be able to go and compete on the national scale if you qualify for your tournament championships, whatever. All of those programs are still available to you. Football is the only sport in the nation where if you are outside of an elite group of automatic qualifying conferences, you have a very, very slim chance of getting in. No chance previously, and now a slim chance. But you have to make the decision based on football. So I don't know if that answers the question fully, but yeah, back then they made the right call. If they were making the call now, it was the wrong one. But good, hindsight's 2020.
Awesome. We'll pivot to a couple last topics before we finish up. Let's talk a little bit more about the game itself. How excited are Boise fans about this quarterback? Taven Green, he was a redshirt freshman a year ago. I remember, Hank Backmeyer seemed like he was there forever. And 2-2 start. There was a dreadful loss at UTEP, and I guess Avalos fired the offensive coordinator, and Hank was like, "That's my 4 games, man. I'm out." Like you can. UCF's had some players do that. They play in their 4 games. They say, "Hey, I'm hitting the portal. I want to, retain this year as a red shirt so I can go and transfer." And I guess Backmeyer is at Louisiana Tech now. So that kind of led to Taven Green maybe being elevated maybe a little bit quicker than everyone thought. But I mean, ended up having a pretty nice season, right? Didn't he finish 8-2 or 8-3 or something like that? Boise went all the way to the conference championship game, lost to Fresno still, but won the bowl game, so won 10 games overall. So how are Boise fans kind of feeling? Is Taven Green, are people excited about him?
Connor, you can lead off.
Yeah, I think in terms of having excitement at the quarterback position, this is probably the most excited, and I can only speak for myself, but I think this is the most excited I've been for a quarterback since Brett Rippon. Back in, I believe that was 2015, if I'm not mistaken. Last year when we lost Hank and we lost Tim Plow, that was the first time Boise's had a sky falling down moment since I think it was the 2005 MPC Computers Bowl against Boston College. That's how long it had been. Fans have not really felt that before. And so Talon was kind of that missing piece of hope that this fan base probably needed, because it's something we have never seen at the quarterback position before, or at least I cannot remember seeing at the quarterback position before. And to have him, he brings a little bit of hope that this fan base needed, that honestly the administration was probably begging for, to get the ticket sales up when we were playing UT Martin or, playing New Mexico at home or something like that. And so having Talon's been huge, but what's been nice for Boise State is having that, the 3-headed running, or the 2-headed monster running back again. Having something like that to kind of spearhead with Talon has been huge for us. That's something that Boise State has always built its foundation on, is running the ball, beating you guys in the trenches, making you guys just really tired coming into the third and fourth quarter. To be able to do that again is kind of nice, and to have mobility at the quarterback position has been something that Boise State fans haven't really seen before.
Yeah, when I was talking to Grant Hendrick, who was the last Boise State quarterback to win a Fiesta Bowl for us in 2014, and he agreed that this is probably the most talented quarterback that we've ever had, probably the most talented athlete overall we've ever had come to Boise State. We've got a 4-star wide receiver coming in a couple of years once he finishes BYU mission, so we'll see what the future holds. But for now, I mean, Taylon Green, what he can do with his legs and what he has shown the capacity to build to in his arms, we've never seen a quarterback like that. I mean, there are similarities drawn to Jared Zabransky, and his numbers last season were similar to his. But if you there's similarities drawn to Jared Zabransky and even to Grant Hedrick, but no one has quite matched what Taylon Green brings to the table. And you're right. I mean, that three-headed running attack, if you're counting the quarterback, is that trio of runners for Boise State might be some of the 3 best runners we've ever had at one time on a field together for Boise State. So there is a lot of excitement. We do have to run an offense that actually plays to their strengths versus coming out and attempting, 47 passes and only running it 28 times. We do have to run an offense that actually plays to what they bring to the table. But yeah, the Boise State fan base, we plateaued for quite a while there, and not kind of the mid Brian Harsin era moving up. There's a plateau for Boise State, and you kind of felt it in the fan base. But last season, that was the most inspired, the most energetic I have seen the fan base on social media when I was able to come, that I have seen Boise State in a long time. There's a feeling of hope that the future might start looking a little bit like, the past for us if we can just keep developing this team. So yeah, Taylon Green, if we can run the right offense for him, he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the group of 5 this year. And he's going to be one of the most exciting quarterbacks of all time for Boise State.
And Brandon, I mean, I think that's got to be a concern area if you're thinking about, from a UCF perspective, because I think, like I said at the beginning of the show, if, 2 or 3 of those passes that got dropped early in the Washington game by Taylon Green's receivers get caught, he's got a different stat line, and the score at least is a little bit different. So clearly the skill is there, and it almost seemed like all those drop passes were sort of like a game 1 thing anyways, that they'll get cleaned up in practice, that they'll be better in game 2. And I just wonder about the UCF secondary. Like, we just don't really know who these guys are. Who are the guys that you can count on? They rotated, 11 different defensive backs in against Kent State, which of course was by design. But I just feel like in all the comments and all the stuff that you guys do out at practice in the fall and talking to the coaches and hearing little tidbits here and there, like, there just really hasn't been separation in that group. Like, these are our guys. We really, really trust these guys. These guys are going to be awesome lockdown, against the pass. I don't think we've heard that. It seems like there's some talent there just based on like recruiting rankings and stuff like that, but we just don't know who those guys are yet.
Yeah, I think that's the matchup I'm probably most concerned about. I mean, we don't really know what to expect. I mean, I know this is mostly we've been talking about Boise State tonight, but with UCF, they played Kent State. I mean, they could have, played the reserves and had a similar score probably. It's just one of those things where we don't know how good UCF really is. Like, I know there's optimism that, I think most fans are hoping maybe, I think the minimal expectations is just reaching a bowl game here in the first year in the Big 12. But, a lot of people are thinking it could be an 8-4, 9-3 type team, maybe even better. Maybe that's kind of drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't know, because we'll have to see it to start believing it. When with John Rice Plumlee, UCF's quarterback, this is only really his second season as a full-time starting quarterback, and they worked a lot to improve his game over the offseason. And it's kind of a similar. I haven't seen a whole lot of Boise's QB, but I know he can run. I think I was told that he's the fastest player on the Boise State football team at 6'6". John Rice isn't 6'6", but he's probably one of the fastest players for UCF as well. So there's some kind of a little bit of similarities maybe in that respect. But I don't know what to expect on Saturday. I mean, UCF's traveling 2,000 plus miles. We have no idea what that trip's going to do. I mean, maybe it doesn't really matter because you're looking, when I'm looking at a lot of games that UCF has played and gone a long distance, their record isn't very good. Maybe it was the teams those years, it was the teams they were playing. But when UCF has to travel 1,000 or more miles, I forgot what the stat was. I think they're like 4-25 or something. It's not a good record. They're going into a raucous environment. This is a team that's going to be fired up to get that sour taste out of their mouth after putting probably what everyone thinks was a poor showing against Washington. This is a big game for Andy Avalos because I know you guys have kind of talked about it. He's kind of hasn't had that moment yet everyone, I think I get the sense that Boise's maybe the fans have maybe too high of a standard when you look at the Chris Petersen era. But then again, it's kind of been underperforming where Boise should be relative to their conference. Like I feel like Boise State should most years run the Mountain West. And while they kind of have done that, they haven't done that at the consistency I think you guys would come to expect. So I know this is a huge game for Boise and for UCF. Yeah, it's a huge game. But at the end of the day, they lose to Boise, the season isn't over. They still got the Big 12 schedule to look forward to. I mean, look at last year. Kansas State lost to Tulane. And we know with the season that Tulane ended up having, but at the time, it seemed like a really bad loss. Kansas State rebounded to get to the Big 12 championship and beat TCU and win the conference. Well, Tulane did what they did. So as a UCF person, I'm very concerned about this game and how I haven't even begun to think about what a score prediction would be like. I have no idea. Like, does any of you guys kind of have a sense of how this game is going to play out on Saturday?
But I will say before we even go into that, I think it is an important game for UCF. I mean, you don't really have that like marquee road win for Gus Malzahn yet.
No.
You got the bowl game, obviously, against Florida. That was huge. Last year was nice against Tulane, but then things started to kind of fall apart at the end of the season and made that, not as meaningful or whatever. And then this is a big game for John Rice Plumlee because we talk about it all the time with Dylan Gabriel that transferred to Oklahoma. He had great stats. He put up great numbers. There were some times where he looked so impressive, but he never really had that win. He never had that game against a big opponent where it mattered, where, UCF fans were just like, really, this guy stamped his mark on UCF history. So for John Rice Plumlee, I think that journey starts Saturday, and it's going to be interesting because Michael Penix, tore up the Boise secondary. I mean, he threw it deep all day. That's been the big focus of the offseason. Why, Darren Hinshaw was brought in as an offensive coordinator. Throw the deep ball. Let's work on getting John Rice's mechanics right and seeing what he can do in the deep passing game. Well, you've got a pretty good blueprint in what you saw last Saturday, no matter how good Michael Penix is. And I think he's probably a pretty good guy. It might be a top 10 NFL draft pick, but you've got the blueprint now. So what are we going to see from John Rice Plumlee, the game plan from Darren Hinshaw, who, I think kept it kind of conservative against Kent State for obvious reasons. And then, will this be a huge road win to get the momentum going into Big 12 play for Gus Malzahn? I think it's an extremely important game for UCF.
You guys have any thoughts on how you think it's going to play out, or maybe just give your sense of just how important of a game this is from the Boise perspective?
I will say I think this coaching staff, I don't think they've felt it quite like this before, pressure wise. They felt it in the past couple of years after that loss to UTEP last year. I think Andy had some sleepless nights. Andy has yet to beat a Power 5 team as a head coach here at Boise State. That is something that does not fly here at Boise State. You do not do that as a head coach. You don't go 0-for against Power 5 teams as a head coach at Boise State. He has yet to do that. I think he feels the pressure. I think the players feel the pressure as well. I think they can kind of sense fans after that loss. Boise fans have a tend to hop off bandwagons fast. And I think that UW loss kind of pissed some fans off. I think this is a huge game for Boise State. In terms of how it's going to play out, I genuinely don't know. It just seems like one of those games where it almost feels like a week 1 game. Like we didn't really learn a lot from last week besides the fact that you can throw on us and the fact that you guys maybe do have some question marks. That's secondary. And so in terms of how it's going to play out, I don't really have a ton of clues. I do think this is a huge game for both sides. And I think hopefully you guys were tripped up by the blue turf, but it seems like teams have been able to come in here and win at a little bit more regular pace than in the past. And I can't wait for this game. I've had this one circled since September 2nd, 2021. So I'm excited.
Absolutely the same. As soon as I driving back from that game, all I was thinking about was, well, at least they have to come play us. It's tough to win on the blue. Boise State fans, obviously we've given up some wins here and there, and a few more recently than usual. But again, third winningest percentage in the country, and we have not lost a home opener on the blue since 2001. Now, a lot of those home openers were against, not the greatest, but Washington came and played us and we beat them in our home opener as before. So it's tough to come in and win and a home opener on the blue when the fan base is at its peak. I do have an inkling of where this game is going to go. I have a prediction, but you're going to have to watch my game preview on my channel to find that out. That'll be out right after this video. But as far as this game for Boise State, this does feel like the week 1 matchup. A lot of the fan base got overexcited and thought we could win this game. But I think most of us in our minds, in our rational centers of our brain, we knew that we weren't going to win against Washington. We hoped we could keep it close, but we knew that was going to be a loss. UCF is the game, the home opener versus a Power 5 team, first year Power 5, but Power 5 nonetheless, a Big 12 opponent coming to play on the blue. The last Big 12 team that came to Boise State, we almost beat them. Oklahoma State came. That was the year that they were right there. I think they won the Big 12 that year, right? Or they were right there on it. And the refs gave that game away. We had a fumble return for a touchdown that the refs blew dead before they should have. They reviewed it. They realized they shouldn't have blown it dead, but it was too late. It was right at the end of the game, and Boise State would have won that game. So in my mind, we beat Oklahoma State. But you're right. We haven't got that marquee win for Andy Avalos, and this is that marquee win. This is, if we get a win versus UCF, that's our Power 5 win that we then present with a Mountain West, hopefully go through and win all those games too. That's our chance to present it as a New Year's 6 bowl potential team. This is our resume builder versus UCF. And the whole season, I think, whether, if we lose to UCF, I don't think there's a chance that we get to New Year's 6. But if we beat them, there's a chance that Boise State goes here. They win the rest of the Mountain West. They win the conference championship. They're now 12-0. Not 12-1, but 12-game winning streak coming up into the end of the season there. And the American Athletic is weak this year, and the Sun Belt hasn't ridden that East Coast bias well enough yet. I mean, this is the year that Boise State could end. They opened up the New Year's 6 format, the bowl format in 2014, the first year there was a New Year's 6 versus BCS. They won that first Fiesta Bowl. Maybe they can bookend it before we go into the playoff format with a New Year's 6 appearance. But yeah, this is a huge game. I'm incredibly excited for it. And again, to hear more thoughts on that, you'll have to watch my game preview.
Awesome. I think we'll kind of start to wrap up here. Like we were talking about a little earlier, this is a really popular road trip for UCF fans. I was actually just being how difficult it is to kind of get to Boise and connections and long flights and what have you. I think this will end up being, we polled everyone on our message board a few weeks ago, and I think Oklahoma is the most popular road trip, but Boise was number 2. I mean, I think it was by a pretty large margin. Like way more people are going to Boise that are going to Lawrence for the Kansas game, or Manhattan for the Kansas State game, or Lubbock for Texas Tech, or Cincinnati. So there's going to be, I don't know how many, but there'll be a decent amount of UCF fans. Just as guys who are obviously familiar with the Boise area, just do you have any final thoughts or recommendations on, someone coming to town for the first time? Is there something they should do, something they should see? Obviously, everyone's going to the game and going to experience that atmosphere, but what else should people know about when they're visiting Boise?
Yeah, I would tell people that Boise is a beautiful city. I checked the weather. I think it's going to be perfect this weekend. It's only 85 to 90, not a cloud in the sky from Friday to Sunday. So you guys are going to get a great weather weekend in Boise, which is always huge. Pretty vital in terms of what you guys want to do. I would recommend, if you guys don't have a rental car, then it's very easy to stay close to Boise and still really, really enjoy what you're doing. There's tons of places to hike. You can guys hike up to Table Rock. You can hike up at Hyde Park. I would very much recommend going over to Hyde Park. It's on 13th Street, downtown Boise. It's just a nice little older village in Boise that has great little pubs and bars and restaurants to eat. You feel like you're really not that close to Boise, but you're still in the center of downtown for the most part. It's a beautiful area. There's a great bar scene for maybe younger or older crowd if people want to experience that, some nightlife. We have a very, very underrated scene downtown. That's going to be on 6th and Main. There's about, I think, 28 bars within 3 blocks of each other. And they're all awesome, very safe area. Great restaurants. You're going to have Barbacoa, which is a Brazilian steakhouse. It's going to be a little bit closer to the university's campus. You're going to have a place called Wilder, which is a pizza restaurant straight downtown. And then you're going to have another restaurant called The Fork. Those are my 3 favorite. All fantastic food, fantastic drink options. And then also, the service here is pretty much top notch from what I've noticed. There's always going to be tons of people down there, but you're always going to be in and out in 45 minutes to an hour. And so I would just say, if you want to go outdoors, go hike those places. But really, everything you guys can need is going to be at the heart of downtown Boise.
I mean, I'm not going to throw out specific recommendations not being local, but I will say states I visited 44 out of the 50 or driven through 44 out of the 50 states that are in the country. And Boise for me, or Idaho in general, Boise for me has some of the best food, maybe the best food you'll find anywhere, and just such a great, breadth of food as well. I mean, incredible burgers, incredible steaks, incredible barbecue, some really good Mexican. The first time I ever ate Egyptian food was at a restaurant that's not open anymore, but it was in Boise, and that just kind of shows you the breadth of culture that is available there. You're going to have some great times. I always go make sure I grab a burger from Idaho Fry Company. Make sure I get one of their multiple meat burgers, like a bison burger, and then one of their different types of fries. But yeah, you're going to have a great time. As a fan, you got to go visit the Blue. I think it was it USA Today got ranked as the number one sporting venue in the country to go visit of any sport that fans should visit. We won the fan vote or something like that. So you've got to make sure you go visit the Blue. It's going to be a great opportunity for all of you to experience that. And there's some great food locations, and you're very, very friendly people. Right now I'm living in Florida due to my job. So I'll be making the flight with a lot of you. Maybe there'll be some UCF fans on the way. So I can throw some more specific recommendations then. But yeah, everything that Connor said, I definitely echo. And then you're going to be able to explore for yourself and find some great options no matter where you go.
And I'll say this as well. BJ Rains, who Carson and I know fairly well, has said that Carson and I are going to be getting some happy hour drinks on Friday with BJ. And so if there's any fans listening, watching that are going to be in Boise and they want to join, I'd love to chat it up a little bit with you guys and hear what you guys think about Boise. I know Bronco and I have a ton of pride in Boise, just like I'm sure you guys do Orlando and the UCF campus. And so anything I can do to help make your guys' experience better besides Saturday, please let me know. And I would love to help out. So.
Well, I think UCF has UCF alumni is doing a happy hour Friday. I think it's at White Dog Brewing, if that name sounds familiar to you, on 8th, right around 8th Street. And they're doing that from 5:30 to 7:30. So any UCF fans that are looking to meet up with other Knights fans, you can kind of look that stuff up on UCFalumni.com, in addition to obviously the tailgate that they always run at some of these bigger games. But I know that that's where Friday is at least going to start for me, and we'll see where it goes with DJ afterwards. So,
yeah,
it's been a lot of fun.
James, if you want to catch BJ in his pregame video for that he does on Bronco Nation News, another incredible Boise State site, probably the best in the game. But he should be live broadcasting from the James. Some great drinks you can grab there as well.
Guys, I've really had a blast. Time's really flown by. I was thinking we'd go about an hour. We've gone hour 16. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you all and learning about Boise State and just kind of the area. And you guys have done a great job. I really appreciate you coming on. And Bronco, I'll talk with you, I know, this week. And you're going to the game, right? You said you're going to fly up. So both of you will be in Boise.
Yeah, this is, like I said, every year I make one Boise State game. In 2021, it was the game at UCF. I wasn't able to get to Boise, but this year I'm also making the UCF game, but it's going to be up at Boise. So I'm so excited to get to the city with a bunch of you guys and may hopefully get you guys a couple beers.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to meeting you guys this weekend. And thanks for your time, and best of luck to Boise State the rest of the season.
Thank you guys very much for having me. This has been a blast. Appreciate it.
And I'll end every video that I'm on. I end it the same way. Go Big Blue!
Broncos 38-17. Thanks for flying up and supporting our economy. Appreciate it, guys.
Charge on.
Charge on. All right, guys. Take care. Good night.